The refugee fleet drifted through the endless darkness of space, like a collection of broken dreams. 17 cycles had passed since they fled their burning world, and Ambassador Kira Velson could see the exhaustion on every face she passed in the corridors. Her people, the Valorians, had once lived on a beautiful planet covered in purple forests and silver oceans. They had built cities that touched the clouds. They had raised their children in peace for over 1,000 generations. Then the Keth Dominion came with their warships and their hunger for conquest. The Keth did not want to rule the Valorians. They wanted to own them. When the Valorians refused to surrender, the Keth burned their world until nothing remained but ash and memory. 3 million survivors escaped in whatever ships could fly. They had been running ever since, jumping from system to system, always looking over their shoulders for the enemy that hunted them. Kira walked through the main corridor of the lead ship, her pale lavender skin showing the marks of stress and sleepless nights. She passed families huddled together in spaces meant for cargo. She saw children who had never known solid ground beneath their feet. She heard the coughing of the sick and the quiet crying of those who had lost hope. The ship was dying around them. The air recyclers worked at half capacity. The food supplies would last maybe 2 more months. The medical bay had run out of basic medicines weeks ago. When the sensors detected a small blue planet in a distant arm of the galaxy, Kira felt something she had not felt in a long time. She felt fear mixed with desperate hope. The planet was called Earth, and it was home to a species called humans. Kira had heard stories about humans from traders and travelers. They were a young species, barely 1,000 years into space travel. Some said they were violent and unpredictable. Others said they were curious and friendly. No one seemed to agree on what humans actually were. Kira did not care about the stories. She cared about survival. Her people needed food, medicine, and a safe place to rest. If the humans could provide even one of those things, she would beg for it. She stood before the communications array with her most trusted advisors around her. Her hands trembled as she prepared to send the message. "What do we offer them?" asked Elder Tommen, his old face wrinkled with worry. "We have nothing left. No resources, no technology they would want, no military strength. We are beggars now." Kira closed her eyes for a moment. "We offer them the truth. We tell them who we are and what happened to us. We ask for help and hope they have mercy." She activated the transmission and spoke in the common trade language that most spacefaring species understood. "This is Ambassador Kira Velson of the Valorian refugee fleet. We are 3 million survivors of a destroyed world. We have been running from the Keth Dominion for 17 cycles. Our ships are failing. Our people are sick and hungry. We come to you not as invaders or threats, but as desperate souls seeking shelter. We ask for any help you can provide. Food, medicine, a safe place to rest. We have nothing to offer in return, except our gratitude and our promise that we mean you no harm." She ended the transmission and waited. The silence that followed felt heavier than the void of space itself. Hours passed. Kira refused to leave the communications room. She sat in a chair and stared at the screen, willing it to light up with a response. Around her, advisors came and went. Some brought her water that she did not drink. Others brought food that she did not eat. 6 hours after she sent her message, the screen flickered to life. A human face appeared. He was an older male with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. He wore a uniform covered in medals and symbols that Kira did not recognize. Behind him, she could see other humans working at various stations. "This is Admiral Pete Donnelly of the United Earth Defense Force," the human said. His voice was calm and steady. "We received your transmission, Ambassador. We have reviewed the data you sent about your situation." Kira stood up quickly, her heart's beating fast in her chest. Valorians had 2 hearts, and both of them were pounding now. "Admiral, thank you for responding. I understand if you cannot help us. We know we are strangers to you. But any small assistance would be more than we have received from anyone else in 17 cycles of wandering." The human admiral looked at her with an expression she could not read. Then he did something strange. He smiled. "Ambassador, I need you to stop right there. You don't need to beg. You don't need to explain why you deserve help. You showed up at our door, hungry and scared, and that's all the reason we need." Kira felt her translator must have made an error. "I do not understand. You are offering help without conditions? Without negotiations?" "Ma'am, I've got 3 kids at home," the Admiral said. "If they showed up at a stranger's door needing help, I would want that stranger to help them first and worry about everything else later. Now, I have some questions for you, but they are not about what you can give us. I need to know what you need from us. How many of your people require medical attention?" They seemed just as confused as she was. "We have over 12,000 people in critical condition. Another 50,000 need basic medical care. Our doctors have done everything they can with what little we have left." The Admiral nodded and turned to speak to someone off-screen. "Get me the Mercy and the Hope. Tell them to prepare for a mass medical operation. I want every available doctor ready to move within the hour." He turned back to Kira. "We are sending hospital ships to your fleet. They will arrive within 6 hours. In the meantime, I am transmitting coordinates to a space station where your ships can dock for repairs and resupply. Food, water, medicine, and fuel will be provided." Kira felt tears forming in her eyes. Valorians rarely cried, but she could not stop herself. "Admiral, we cannot pay for any of this. We have nothing." The Admiral leaned forward, and his expression became very serious. "Ambassador, let me make something clear. We are not asking for payment. We are not going to ask for payment. You are people in trouble, and we are people who can help. That is the end of the calculation. Now, please transmit a list of your most urgent needs, and we will do everything we can to meet them." Kira opened her mouth to argue, to insist that there must be some catch, some hidden cost. But she saw the look in the human's eyes, and she realized something that changed everything she thought she knew about the universe. He meant every word. For the first time in 17 cycles, Kira allowed herself to hope that her people might survive. 6 months had passed since the Valorian fleet arrived in human space, and Kira still found herself waiting for the dream to end. Every morning she woke up expecting to hear that the humans had changed their minds, that the help would stop, that her people would be cast back into the darkness of space. Instead, the humans kept giving. The hospital ships had saved over 11,000 Valorian lives in the first week alone. Human doctors worked alongside Valorian healers, learning about their biology and adapting their treatments to help. The space station became a temporary home where families could sleep in real beds for the first time in years. Children ate fresh food and laughed in corridors that did not smell of recycled air and desperation. But the humans were not satisfied with temporary solutions. They wanted to give the Valorians something permanent. Kira stood on the surface of a planet called Kepler 442b and tried to understand what she was seeing. The world stretched out before her in shades of green and gold. Mountains rose in the distance. A river flowed through a wide valley below. The sky was a soft blue, different from the purple skies of her lost homeworld, but beautiful in its own way. "The United Earth Council voted last month," said Danny Marsh, the human construction foreman who had become her guide. He was a short man with thick arms and a friendly face covered in stubble. "This planet is now officially called New Valoria. It belongs to your people. Not as a colony of Earth, not as a territory we control. It is your sovereign world, free and independent." Kira turned to look at him. "You are giving us a planet?" "That is the idea, yes." "A whole planet?" Danny laughed. It was a warm sound that made Kira feel slightly less confused. Ambassador, I know this is a lot to take in, but we found this world about 50 years ago during our exploration program. Good air, good water, good soil. We never settled it because we had other priorities. When your people arrived, we looked at our maps and said, well, we have a planet that nobody is using. Why not give it to the folks who need it? Kira walked forward, her feet touching real soil for the first time since she left her burning homeworld. The ground felt solid and warm beneath her. The wind carried the scent of growing things. She knelt down and pressed her hands into the earth, feeling it crumble between her fingers. I walked on soil like this when I was a child, she said quietly. I thought I would never feel it again. Danny stood beside her in respectful silence. He seemed to understand that she needed a moment. After a while, Kira stood up and faced him. Show me what you are building. They walked down into the valley, where hundreds of human construction vehicles were already at work. Massive machines moved earth and laid foundations. Smaller vehicles carried building materials from landing zones, where supply ships arrived every hour. Thousands of human workers in yellow hard hats moved with purpose and energy. Danny pulled out a tablet and showed her the plans. We are starting with the housing districts here by the river. 50,000 units in the first phase, ready in about 8 months. Each unit is designed for a Valorian family, based on the information your elders gave us about traditional living spaces. Kira looked at the designs and felt her breath catch. The buildings had domed ceilings like the homes on her lost world. They had communal cooking areas, where families could gather and share meals. They had small gardens attached to each unit, where Valorians could grow the plants that reminded them of home. You studied our culture, she said. Of course we did. We talked to your elders, your historians, your artists. We wanted to understand what home meant to Valorians, so we could build something that actually felt like home. Danny swiped to another page on his tablet. See here? Schools with adjustable lighting, because your kids need more ultraviolet exposure than human children. Medical centers designed for Valorian biology. Public spaces with meditation gardens, because your people practice contemplative traditions. We tried to think of everything. Kira looked at the human foreman. He was covered in dust and sweat from working in the field. His hands were rough and calloused. He was clearly a man who built things with his own labor, not just a manager who gave orders from a distance. Why are you doing this? She asked. Your government must have spent enormous resources on this project. The ships, the materials, the workers, the planet itself. What do you gain from helping us? I guess the simple answer is that we gain neighbors. Friends, maybe, if things go well. But honestly, Ambassador, most of us are not thinking about what we gain. We are thinking about what you lost. I do not understand. Danny pointed toward a group of Valorian children who had arrived on an early transport. They were running through a field of tall grass, chasing each other and laughing. Human workers had stopped their machines to watch them play, smiling at the sight. See those kids? A year ago, they were living in cargo holds, breathing bad air, eating whatever scraps your fleet could find. Now they are running through grass on a world that belongs to them. When I go home at night, I think about that. I think about how my work today helps some kid have a better tomorrow. That is what I gain, Ambassador. That is what we all gain. Kira watched the children play. She saw Valorian families walking through the construction site, pointing at the rising buildings, talking excitedly about which neighborhood they wanted to live in. She saw human workers sharing meals with Valorian refugees, laughing together despite the language barriers that still existed between them. A human woman approached them. She wore the uniform of an architect and carried rolled-up plans under her arm. Her name was Beth Collins, and she was in charge of designing the capital city. Ambassador, I wanted to show you the plans for the government complex. We designed it based on the old Senate building from your homeworld. We found images in your historical archives and tried to recreate the style. Kira looked at the designs and saw the curved walls and the high windows that had defined Valorian architecture for centuries. She saw the central dome where her ancestors had made laws and debated philosophy. She saw a piece of her dead world brought back to life on paper. "You are rebuilding our history," she whispered. Beth nodded. "We thought it was important. Your people lost so much. We cannot bring back the dead or undo what the Keth did. But we can help you remember where you came from while you build something new." Kira felt the tears coming again, and this time she did not try to stop them. She had spent 17 cycles being strong for her people, hiding her grief and her fear behind a mask of leadership. But standing here on this world that humans had given freely, surrounded by people who worked to rebuild what her enemies had destroyed, she allowed herself to feel the weight of everything that had happened. Danny and Beth stood quietly, giving her space to grieve and hope at the same time. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "I have met many species in my travels through the stars. I have seen empires that rule through fear, and civilizations that care only for profit. I have seen cruelty that made me question whether the universe had any goodness left in it. And then I came to Earth, and I found humans." She looked at Danny and Beth with gratitude that she could not put into words. "You are unlike anything I expected. You are unlike anything I have ever known." Danny smiled and put his hard hat back on his head. "Well, Ambassador, we are just getting started. Wait until you see what we do next." 2 years had passed since the Valorians landed on their new world, and Kira had finally started to believe that peace was possible. The cities were growing. The farms were producing food. Children were going to schools where they learned about both Valorian history and human culture. For the first time since the destruction of her homeworld, Kira allowed herself to imagine a future. Then the Keth found them. She was sitting in her office in the newly completed Capitol building when the emergency alert sounded. The harsh noise cut through the quiet morning like a knife, and Kira felt her blood turn cold. She knew that sound. She had heard it on the day her homeworld burned. Her assistant rushed into the room, his face pale with fear. "Ambassador, long-range sensors have detected a Keth battle fleet entering the system. 12 warships. They are heading directly toward New Valoria." Kira stood up so fast that her chair fell over behind her. "How long until they arrive?" 4 hours at their current speed. 4 hours. In 4 hours, everything her people had built would be ashes. The cities, the farms, the schools, the children laughing in the streets, all of it would burn, just like before. She ran to the communications center, her heart pounding in her chest. Around her, she could see panic spreading through the building. Valorians who had survived the first destruction knew what was coming. They knew the Keth did not take prisoners. They knew the Keth showed no mercy. Kira reached the communications center and found the human liaison officer already there. His name was Kevin Porter, a young man with serious eyes and a calm voice that never seemed to waver. He was speaking into his headset in rapid English, a language Kira had learned over the past 2 years. "What is happening?" she demanded. Kevin held up one hand, asking her to wait. "Ambassador, Earth Defense Command has been tracking the Keth fleet since they entered this sector. They knew about this before we did. What does that mean? Are we being evacuated? Are your people going to help us escape again?" Kevin smiled, and it was not the smile of someone delivering bad news. "Ambassador, watch the sky." Kira moved to the window and looked up. For a moment, she saw nothing but the blue expanse dotted with white clouds. Then she saw flashes of light appearing across the sky, like stars being born in daylight. One flash, then 10, then dozens. Ships were emerging from hyperspace above New Valoria. Human ships. "What am I seeing?" Kira whispered. Kevin stood beside her. That is the 4th Earth Defense Fleet. 47 warships, including 3 dreadnoughts and 12 heavy cruisers. They have been stationed in this sector for the past 18 months, just in case something like this happened. You knew the Keth might come? We considered it a possibility, yes. The Keth do not like letting prey escape. Our intelligence services have been monitoring their activities since your people arrived. When we saw them mobilizing a fleet in this direction, we positioned our forces to intercept. On the communication screens, a new image appeared. A human woman in a naval uniform sat in a command chair, surrounded by tactical displays and bustling crew members. She had short gray hair and eyes that looked like they had seen 1,000 battles. This is Admiral Samantha Drake of the USS Constellation, flagship of the 4th Fleet, the woman said. Her voice was broadcast across all Valorian communication channels. To all citizens of New Valoria, please remain calm. We are aware of the approaching threat, and we are prepared to deal with it. You are under the protection of Earth. No harm will come to you today. Then the Admiral switched to a different frequency, one that the Keth would receive. To the Keth vessels entering this system, this is Admiral Samantha Drake of the United Earth Defense Force. You are in violation of Earth territorial space. New Valoria is a protected sovereign world under the Chicago Accords of 2287. You have 60 seconds to reverse course and withdraw from this system. If you do not comply, we will interpret your presence as an act of war and respond accordingly. Kira held her breath. Around her, every Valorian in the room stood frozen, waiting. The Keth response came quickly. A harsh voice speaking through a translator, full of arrogance and contempt. These refugees are property of the Keth Dominion. They fled from justice and owe a debt that must be paid. Surrender them to us, and we will leave your primitive world in peace. Refuse, and we will add Earth to the list of civilizations that learned not to defy us. Admiral Drake did not flinch. She did not hesitate. Her response was immediate and certain. Let me make something very clear, Commander. These people came to us afraid and alone. They had lost everything. They asked for shelter, and we gave them a world. They asked for safety, and we gave them our protection. They are not your property. They are not your slaves. They are citizens of an independent world under the protection of the United Earth Government. And if you think we are going to hand over a single one of them because you showed up with guns and threats, you fundamentally do not understand what humanity is willing to do for the people we have decided to protect. The Admiral leaned forward in her chair, and her voice became harder than steel. You have 30 seconds left. I suggest you use them wisely. The Keth commander laughed. Foolish humans. You do not know what you face. The Keth have conquered 100 worlds. We have destroyed species far older and more powerful than yours. Your 40 ships cannot stand against us. 20 seconds. We will burn your planet and take our property regardless. 10 seconds. You will regret this, human. Time's up. The sky above New Valoria lit up with fire. Kira watched through the window as lines of light streaked across the heavens. Human weapons reached out and touched the Keth ships with terrible precision. Explosions bloomed in the darkness of space like orange flowers. The battle was not a contest. It was not even a fight. It was an execution. The Keth ships tried to return fire. Their weapons splashed harmlessly against human shields that glowed blue with absorbed energy. They tried to flee, but human ships cut off every escape route. They tried to send messages, calling for reinforcements, but human electronic warfare systems blocked every transmission. In 11 minutes, it was over. 12 Keth warships reduced to floating debris. The threat ended before it could truly begin. But Kira noticed something in the aftermath. The human ships did not celebrate. There were no cheering transmissions, no boastful messages about victory. Instead, Admiral Drake appeared on the screen again, and her face was solemn. "We lost 2 ships in the engagement," she said quietly. "The USS Ranger and the USS Endeavour, crews of 400 and 300 respectively. Rescue operations are underway for survivors." Kira felt shame wash over her. Humans had died defending her people. Families on Earth would receive news that their loved ones were never coming home, all because the Valorians had brought their enemies to this corner of the galaxy. She activated her own communication channel. "Admiral Drake, I do not know how to express what I am feeling. Your people died to protect mine. I am so deeply sorry." Admiral Drake looked into the camera with those experienced eyes. "Ambassador, my crews knew the risks when they signed up. They chose to serve because they believed in something greater than themselves. They believed that protecting innocent people was worth fighting for, even dying for. Do not apologize for their sacrifice. Honor it by building the future they died to give you." Kira nodded, unable to speak. The Admiral continued, "We will maintain a permanent defense presence in this system from now on. The Keth will not catch us off guard again. You have my word, Ambassador. As long as Earth stands, New Valoria will be safe." That night, Kira walked through the streets of the capital city. She saw Valorians and humans standing together, looking up at the sky where the battle had been fought. She saw children holding hands with human soldiers who had come down from the ships to reassure the population. She saw her people crying with relief and gratitude. A young Valorian girl tugged at Kira's sleeve. "Ambassador, are the bad ones gone?" Kira knelt down to look the child in the eyes. "Yes, little one, the bad ones are gone. The humans made sure they can never hurt us again." The girl smiled. "I like the humans, they are nice." Kira looked up at the stars, where human warships patrolled, standing guard over a world that was not their own, protecting people they had only known for 2 years. "Yes," she said softly, "they are very nice indeed." The destruction of the Keth fleet above New Valoria sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For 1,000 years, the Keth Dominion had been the terror of known space. They had conquered over 100 worlds. They had destroyed civilizations that refused to submit. They had built an empire on fear and blood, and no one had ever stood against them successfully. Until now. In the halls of the Galactic Assembly, representatives from dozens of species watched the battle recordings with stunned expressions. They saw 12 Keth warships reduced to debris in 11 minutes. They saw human weapons cutting through Keth shields like they were made of paper. They saw a young species from a small blue planet do what ancient empires had failed to do for centuries. They saw humanity bare its teeth. On Earth, the response to the battle was different from what Kira expected. She had thought humans would celebrate their victory, hold parades, and boast about their military strength. Instead, she found a planet in mourning. The names of every human who died in the battle were read aloud on every news broadcast. Their faces were shown on screens in every city. Their families were given support and comfort by communities that came together to share the grief. The 2 lost ships were honored with ceremonies that made Kira weep. But alongside the mourning, there was something else, a cold and determined anger that Kira could feel in every human she met. She traveled to Earth for the first time since her arrival in human space. The United Earth Council had requested her presence for an important announcement, and she could not refuse. The council chamber was a vast, circular room filled with representatives from every nation on the human homeworld. Kira sat in a special section reserved for allied species, watching as the council president called the session to order. Her name was Maria Santos, a tall woman with dark hair and fierce eyes. She stood at the central podium and addressed the assembly with a voice that carried the weight of billions of lives. Representatives of Earth, citizens watching across our world and our colonies, I speak to you today about the attack on New Valoria and our response to Keth aggression. The chamber fell silent. 2 years ago, a fleet of refugees arrived at our doorstep. They had lost their world. They had lost their homes. They had lost so many of their people to an empire that saw them as property rather than persons. They came to us with nothing but hope and asked for shelter. We gave them a planet. We gave them our protection. We gave them our word that they would be safe. Maria Santos paused and looked around the chamber. 3 days ago, the Keth Dominion tested that word. They sent 12 warships to take back what they considered their slaves. Our Fourth Fleet responded. 703 human sailors gave their lives defending New Valoria. 703 families lost mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters. Kira felt tears running down her face. She looked around and saw that she was not alone. Humans and the few other alien observers present were all crying. We mourn our dead. We honor their sacrifice. But we do not stop there. Today, this council will vote on a resolution that will define humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. Maria Santos lifted a document and began to read. Let it be known to all civilizations, empires, and governing bodies throughout the known galaxy. The people of New Valoria are under the eternal protection of Earth. An attack on Valorian citizens, territory, or sovereignty will be considered an attack on Earth itself. We will respond with the full force of our military, our resources, and our unwavering resolve. This protection has no expiration date. It carries no conditions. It cannot be negotiated away or withdrawn. The Valorians are our neighbors, our friends, and our responsibility. We stood with them today. We will stand with them tomorrow. We will stand with them for as long as humanity exists. This is our promise. This is our word, and we do not break our word. The chamber erupted in thunderous applause. Representatives stood and cheered. Some pounded their desks with their fists. The vote that followed was unanimous. Kira sat in stunned silence, unable to process what she had just witnessed. Humanity had not simply defended her people from one attack. They had declared eternal protection. They had made the Valorians their permanent responsibility, asking nothing in return. After the session, Kira met privately with President Santos in a small office overlooking the city below. Why? Kira asked. It was the same question she had been asking since the day she arrived, and she still did not fully understand the answer. Maria Santos smiled sadly. Because we remember what it was like to be alone and afraid. Because we know what it feels like to need help and find none. Earth's history is filled with suffering, Ambassador. Wars, famines, plagues, cruelty beyond imagination. But it is also filled with moments when people chose to help each other despite the cost. Every time we faced our darkest hours, someone reached out a hand. We survived because of kindness as much as strength. She walked to the window and looked out at the city. When your ships appeared in our sky, we saw ourselves in you. We saw our own ancestors fleeing persecution. We saw our own children lost and hungry. How could we turn you away? How could we call ourselves human if we did not help? 2 days later, Kira attended another meeting. This one was at the Galactic Assembly, where Earth's ambassador was presenting humanity's terms to the Keth Dominion. His name was Christopher Blake, a young man with calm eyes and a voice like quiet thunder. He stood before representatives from every major civilization in known space and addressed the Keth delegation directly. The Keth Dominion has committed acts of genocide, slavery, and unprovoked aggression. You destroyed the Valorian homeworld. You hunted the survivors across the galaxy. You attacked a protected world under Earth's sovereignty. These crimes cannot stand without answer. The Keth ambassador, a tall creature with dark scales and predator eyes, sneered at the human. You dare lecture us? Your species is barely out of its cradle. The Keth were conquering worlds when your ancestors were still living in caves. Christopher Blake did not react to the insult. His expression remained perfectly calm. Our terms are as follows. First, the Keth Dominion will pay full reparations to the Valorian people. The amount will be calculated based on the value of their lost homeworld, their dead, and the suffering they endured. Second, the Keth Dominion will formally recognize New Valoria as an independent sovereign world with full rights under galactic law. Third, the Keth leadership will broadcast a formal apology to every inhabited system in the galaxy, admitting their crimes and accepting responsibility. The Keth ambassador laughed harshly. These terms are absurd. We will never accept such humiliation. Christopher Blake nodded slowly. Then we will continue what we started above New Valoria. We will hunt down every Keth warship. We will blockade every Keth world. We will dismantle your empire piece by piece until there is nothing left, and we will not stop until every Keth leader who participated in the genocide is brought to justice. The chamber went silent. The Keth ambassador stared at the human with something Kira had never seen in Keth eyes before. Fear. You would not dare, the Keth said, but his voice wavered. We lost 700 people defending a world that was not even ours. Do you really want to find out what we will do when we are fighting for survival? Christopher Blake leaned forward. Accept the terms. Rebuild your civilization as something better than what it was. Or refuse, and discover what happens when humanity decides that an empire needs to end. 3 days of negotiations followed. The Keth tried every trick, every threat, every manipulation they knew. The humans refused to budge. In the end, the Keth Dominion accepted all terms. Kira watched the broadcast of the Keth apology from her office on New Valoria. She saw the Keth Emperor, ancient and proud, speaking words of regret and shame to the entire galaxy. She saw reparation payments begin flowing to Valorian accounts. She saw the official recognition of New Valoria signed by every major power in known space. And she understood, finally, what humanity truly was. They were not conquerors. They were not builders of empires. They were something far more dangerous to those who preyed on the weak. They were protectors, and they would never stop protecting the people they had decided to call their own. 10 years had passed since the Valorian fleet first appeared in human space, and Kira Velson stood in the garden of her home, watching her grandchildren play. The garden was beautiful. Purple flowers from seeds saved during the escape from her homeworld grew alongside earth roses and lilies. Fruit trees from both worlds provided shade from the warm afternoon sun. A small stream ran through the property, its water clear and clean, carrying the sound of peace. Her grandchildren, 3 of them now, chased each other through the garden with the boundless energy of youth. They had been born on New Valoria. They had never known the terror of running from the Keth. They had never experienced hunger or fear or the cold darkness of space. To them, this garden, this city, this world was simply home. And they were not alone. Human children from the nearby settlement had come to play, as they often did. The two species mixed together so naturally that sometimes Kira forgot which laughing voice belonged to which child. She heard a hover car descending and turned to see a familiar figure step out. Admiral Samantha Drake, now retired from active service, walked across the garden with the same steady confidence she had shown during the battle 10 years ago. Her hair had gone completely white, but her eyes still held that fierce protectiveness that Kira remembered. "Ambassador," Samantha said warmly, embracing her. "Just Kira now," she replied with a smile. "I retired from that position 5 years ago. The young ones have taken over. They are doing wonderful things. Old habits. You will always be ambassador to me." They walked together along the garden path, enjoying the warmth of the day. In the distance, the capital city rose against the horizon, its towers and domes gleaming in the sunlight. Beyond the city, farms stretched across fertile valleys. Beyond the farms, forests and mountains created a landscape that millions of Valorians now called home. The population reached 6 million last month, Kira said. Our birth rate has finally recovered to pre-war levels. Children are being born faster than new immigrants are arriving from the colonies. That is wonderful news. Your people are thriving. Kira nodded slowly. We are, and it is because of you, because of humanity. Samantha was quiet for a moment. I was just doing my job. You know that is not true. You and your people did far more than any job required. You gave us everything. A world, protection, a future for our children and grandchildren. You asked for nothing in return. After 10 years, I still do not fully understand why. They stopped by the stream, watching the water flow over smooth stones. Samantha picked up a pebble and turned it over in her hands. When I was a little girl, she said slowly, my grandmother told me stories about Earth's history. She told me about all the terrible things humans did to each other. Wars that killed millions, slavery that lasted centuries, hatred that divided our species into groups that fought and suffered for generations. She threw the pebble into the stream. But she also told me about the people who stood against all that darkness, the ones who risked everything to help strangers, the ones who hid refugees in their homes during persecutions, the ones who gave their lives so others could be free. She said that was the real story of humanity, not the cruelty, but the choice to be kind despite it. Samantha turned to face Kira. When your ships appeared in our sky, hungry and desperate and alone, we had a choice. We could have looked the other way. We could have calculated the costs and decided it was not our problem. Instead, we chose to be the people my grandmother told me about. We chose to help because that is who we want to be. Kira felt her eyes filling with tears, as they so often did when she thought about what humanity had done for her people. You are remarkable, all of you. In all my years traveling among the stars, meeting dozens of species and civilizations, I have never encountered anyone like humans. We are not perfect, Samantha said. We make mistakes. We argue with each other. Sometimes we fail to live up to our own ideals, but we keep trying. That is the important part. We keep trying to be better than we were yesterday. A young human boy ran up to them, holding a small purple flower he had picked from the garden. Miss Kira, look what I found. It is pretty. Kira knelt down and took the flower gently. It is beautiful. This flower grew on my homeworld a long time ago. We brought the seeds with us when we had to leave. You came from another planet? Like in the stories? Yes, a planet very far away. But now this is my home. Thanks to people like you and your family. The boy smiled brightly. My mom says we are all neighbors now. She says that is what neighbors do. They help each other. Kira looked up at Samantha, who was watching the exchange with a soft expression. Out of the mouths of children, the former admiral said quietly. That evening, Kira attended a celebration in the capital city. It was the 10th anniversary of First Contact Day, the holiday that marked the moment when the Valorian fleet first communicated with Earth. The entire city was decorated with lights and banners in both Valorian purple and Earth blue. She stood on a stage before thousands of Valorians and humans who had gathered in the main square. Behind her sat the current leaders of New Valoria, the Earth Ambassador, and representatives from a dozen other species who had come to witness the celebration. The crowd fell silent as Kira stepped to the podium. 10 years ago, she began, I stood before a communications array and prepared to beg strangers for scraps of food and medicine. I expected to be turned away. I expected to negotiate for every small kindness. I expected the worst, because the galaxy had taught me that the worst was all there was. She paused, looking out at the faces before her, Valorian and human, old and young, all listening together. Instead, I met Admiral Pete Donnelly, who told me that I did not need to beg, who told me that helping people in need was simply what humans did. I did not believe him at first. I thought there must be some trick, some hidden cost. There was only kindness given freely to strangers who had nothing to offer in return. Kira's voice grew stronger. In the 10 years since that day, humanity has given us a world. They have built our cities, healed our sick, educated our children. They have defended us with their warships and their blood. They have stood beside us against enemies who wanted to destroy us. They have done all this without asking for payment, without demanding obedience, without seeking to control us. They have simply been our friends. She felt tears on her face, but did not wipe them away. I have spent 10 years trying to understand humanity. I have read their histories, their philosophies, their literature. I have talked to their leaders and their common people. And I have finally come to understand something important. She looked directly into the cameras that were broadcasting her words across both worlds. Humanity is not special because of their technology or their military strength. They are special because of their hearts. They choose, again and again, to help those who need help. They choose to protect those who cannot protect themselves. They choose to build rather than destroy, to give rather than take, to love rather than hate. Kira raised her hand toward the sky, where human warships still patrolled in silent guardian duty. When I asked Earth for shelter, humanity built us a home. When enemies came to take that home, humanity protected it with their lives. This is not just a gift. This is a promise. A promise that we are not alone in the universe. A promise that kindness still exists among the stars. A promise that there are people out there who will stand with strangers simply because it is the right thing to do. She lowered her hand and smiled through her tears. To my Valorian brothers and sisters, remember what we have been given. Remember who gave it to us. And remember that we must become worthy of this gift by being kind to others as humans have been kind to us. She turned slightly to address the humans in the crowd. To our human neighbors and friends, thank you. Those words are not enough. They will never be enough, but they are all I have. Thank you for seeing us when we were invisible. Thank you for helping us when we were helpless. Thank you for giving us a future when we had none. Kira stepped back from the podium as the crowd erupted in applause. Valorians and humans embraced each other. Children waved flags of both worlds. Music began to play, mixing melodies from two species into something new and beautiful. Later that night, Kira stood alone on her balcony, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the ruins of her old homeworld still floated in cold space. Somewhere out there, other refugee fleets wandered in search of help. But here, on this world that humans had given freely, her people were safe. Her grandchildren would grow up in peace. Future generations would never know the horror of running from the Keth. Because when the Valorians asked Earth for shelter, humanity built them a home. And they had protected it ever since.